For more on the unfolding crisis in Egypt, we're joined right now by the former ambassador to Iraq and many Middle Eastern countries, Ryan Crocker. He's the dean at the George Bush School of Government and Public Service at Texas A&M University. Ambassador, thank you very much for being with us. We know over the weekend what the U.S. position is publicly, that they're supporting a transition there in Egypt. But what do you think specifically is happening behind closed doors?
I think that's exactly what is going on. A quiet discussion with Egypt's leadership, Mubarak, his new vice president, the prime minister, senior figures in the military establishment over how they plan to proceed. The secretary, I think, put it very well yesterday morning. We're talking about the need for orderly change and transition. Mm-hmm. That's going to have to be Egyptian-led. I think time is of the essence. They need to develop a plan, announce it, and implement it in the next few days.
Right. It's certainly time is of the essence, Ambassador. We know that key to this transition is going to be the support of the military. What is our relationship like with the Egyptian military?
As you know, Betty, we have had a decades-long association with the Egyptian military. We are their primary source of arms since the Egyptian-Israeli peace treaty of 1979. Mm-hmm. So it's a close relationship, yet they are a proud and independent force. We're not going to be telling them what to do. They'll decide on their own. But I think the very long associations we've had, thousands of their officers have been trained in U.S. schools. I think that's all going to help as we work our way through this.
Well, another key part of that, though, Ambassador, is what Hans was describing earlier, which is that, as you mentioned, we have the decades-long relationship. We supply military aid to Egypt. At any point, do you expect that we could possibly use that lever in order to support this transition, so to speak, in Egypt?
Well, I think that's all part of the dialogue that's been ongoing over the weekend. How do they intend to proceed? I think we ask some questions. I think we make some suggestions because the status quo clearly is not tenable. Every day you have huge crowds out in the streets intermingled with the Egyptian military, which has shown, I think, admirable restraint, is a danger. So we need to get beyond that, and they are the ones who are going to have to come up with a plan.
Well, Ambassador, let me put it this way. Let me draw from your experience, having been an ambassador in Iraq, Syria, many other Middle Eastern countries. If you were on the ground there or in the room with Secretary Clinton today in D.C., what would you be advising?
That we continue the discussion.
But what does that mean, though? But please get specific. What do you mean, Ambassador?
Well, here's the specific. Presidential elections are scheduled for September. This would be a great time for the Egyptian government to announce that they want to start a national dialogue geared toward those free and fair elections. It would be a great time for President Mubarak to announce, for example, that he was not going to be a candidate. Mm-hmm. A great time to establish an independent election commission that would involve all the major elements, both establishment and non-establishment, and begin the process the Secretary talked about of a discussion on orderly transition. That would be one way to go. Okay.
So in your view, there is no future in Egypt here with President Mubarak still at the head?
I really do think that the Mubarak era is coming to an end. I don't think there's any question about that.
Okay. Things appear to have forever changed in Egypt then because of that. Ambassador, for foreign investors who are there, the game has changed. Does this crisis make it even more difficult for investors to stay in Egypt or to invest in Egypt? Or what is the era for them after this?
Well, that's an important point, Betty, and another reason why I think the government and its friends need to move away from where they are now, because every day that we're treated to images of crowds in the streets with no leadership, that's pretty scary for investors. So I think part of the signal needs to be that Egypt is fundamentally stable. They will work through a political process. That foreign investment has to be a very important part of that process. We've all talked about economic reform. Right. Well, it's hard to have meaningful economic reform if you've had a massive flight of international capital. So there needs to be an early reassuring signal, I think, to investors, both foreign and domestic.
Right. Ambassador, before I leave you, people talk about whether or not this is the same as the Iranian Revolution in the late 1970s. Are we looking at a similar situation?
I don't think so, Betty. First, the military has been, I think, absolutely solid. There are no indications of defections there. They have been restrained. They are a respected institution. Second, there is no Khomeini. There is no charismatic, overarching figure representing the opposition. There's been a lot of talk about Mohammed al-Baradei, a very respected figure, but far better respected and far better known outside Egypt than inside Egypt. So I don't see an Iranian situation at all. I would make one final point, though, and it's another reason why there has to be an effort to move this into an orderly rather than a street-driven process. There are those out there who want to take advantage of the current instability and chaos.
Right.
Remember Islamic Jihad, forced out of Egypt in a series of bloody encounters in the 90s. Ayman Zawahiri, the number 2 in Al-Qaeda, is Egyptian from Islamic Jihad. They would love to come back, and the longer there's chaos and disorder, the longer there is no plan for a stable transition,
right,
the better the odds are they're going to find a way in, and
yes,
that would be deadly for all of us.
It would be the more vulnerable that these countries are to these more radical and militant Islamic groups. Thank you, Ambassador. I really appreciate you spending this time with me. Ambassador Ryan Crocker from Texas A&M University.